Welcome to the Startup Grind.
And so next, what I like to do is ask everyone to stand up. It's part of our tradition. And I'd like to introduce Brian Wong. And going through his list, I almost have a little bit of a feeling of inadequacy, but let's go here. So Brian earned his bachelor's at age 18. He founded Kiip at age 19, and since then he's raised $35 million. He made the cover of Entrepreneur magazine at 24. He's already written a book called The Cheat Code. He's been named on Forbes 30 under 30 3 times, and also the top 25 under 25 in Silicon Valley. So with that, please give him a round of applause. So hopefully you're going to inspire some of these high school kids to start their own businesses.
Yeah, I've been connecting with them and learning how it's like to be a high school kid in 2018, which, who knows, man? They were born after 2000. That's
yeah,
nuts.
I know. I'm feeling...
Can you even think of that? Like, oh my God.
Some of these kids are just a little bit older than my daughter, so I'm feeling kind of old here.
It's all good, man.
So I'm like, how did you graduate at college at 18? That's just amazing. So
yeah, happy to share more. First of all, how's it going, everyone? Thanks for having me. Honestly, like, you're probably wondering, what am I doing in SAC? And what do I want to do with Startup Grind crew here? And I'll tell you, I've had such rewarding experiences speaking at Startup Grind around the world. I'm talking everywhere from Mumbai to Colombo and Sri Lanka, and I was in Tokyo, and everywhere you go, what it helps me sort of put my head around is that entrepreneurship is global. It's a thing that's just a part of all of us, and it's just having that first sort of nudge and wanting to get into it is really the biggest challenge, right? Like how can I jump off a cliff and grow wings while I'm falling is kind of the perspective, right? And first of all, you could literally be anywhere else right now. It's Thursday night and you're here talking about startup shit. So good for you, like honestly, and this is the first step. So yeah, thanks for having me. I guess the
college at 18.
The college at 18. So I was born and raised in Vancouver, so I'm Canadian. Go Canada. Yeah. You guys love Canadians, yeah? Right? Canada? Yeah.
Hey.
Y'all want to move there?
Yes.
You know? I mean, if he gets reelected, we'll welcome you. Don't worry. Yeah, I know, right? We have great marketing. Yeah, so I was born and raised in Vancouver, and people always assume a lot because I'm Asian that they thought, tiger parents are like they force you to skip a bunch of grades or whatever. So me skipping grades was actually, let's just throw it out there. Asians, I'm good at math. I'm obviously going to skip grades, obviously great at school. No, I actually chose to skip myself, and my mom and dad were actually worried about me skipping. They actually didn't want me to skip because they were like, your social development skills are going to be really affected, and you're going to be super fucking awkward. And they were right. I still am. But I think it turned out okay. But the reason was I found that school, and this is a whole nother discussion, but just the fact that for some reason we're in 2018, and yet there's still this established norm that everyone should do 16 years of school. Everyone, right? Makes no sense to me, right? And we're in an age of amazing technology where we can customize things to people. You can personalize Facebook feeds and put random shit in there, but they can't personalize learning plans, right? And so I found that just school was just so industrialized, and you guys know all this about it. So I just decided to skip a few grades. And then also as Asians, if we ever drop out, like I would be in a ditch somewhere, my parents would have murdered me. So my whole hack was, let me just skip a bunch of grades and at least graduate, and so have that stamp of approval, but at least get out early, right? So I managed to get out at 18 and then start jumping right in. So I don't regret it because now I'm 27. I'm getting old. You can punch me later. And I do remember someone telling me, they kind of put into perspective. They're like, Brian, if I were to tell you that you would die 4 years earlier than everyone else here, would it really matter that you skipped 4 grades type of thing? Just, if you think about it from a grander perspective, at the end of the day, I think it was just that I knew I was going to be so bored out of my mind, and I would not have been able to learn effectively given that time frame. That's why I ended up doing it.
So, it seemed like even while you were in college, you were still kind of busy. It looked like from your LinkedIn, you actually started like 3 companies while in college. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so it's kind of easy to start something. So let's just not use the word company necessarily, right? Because everyone kind of has this daunting thought where they're like, oh, if I'm doing a company, I gotta like incorporate and like get a lawyer and all this BS. Listen, all you gotta do is design a logo, buy a URL, and bam, you have a thing, right? Like literally, no joke. So I just invented all these entities. I had this company called Air Marketing. That was actually incorporated. I had Air Marketing, Rocket Kick, Follow Formation. And the best part is I think people naturally gravitate towards you if you're starting things. But you can't start too many things. So let's just be clear here. If you're that person who seems to be starting things all the time and you're not really following through, people start to get this idea that you're kind of flaky or you're just like always this new shiny object. But at the time in college, I was like, hey, why not start this web design thing, give myself a brand. So this is what I've learned. If you call yourself the Brian Wong Web Design Company, it doesn't really seem that legit because it's just me. But if you create some name, right, that sounds super cool, like Honeybee or like, like blue, gold, red or something. I didn't make shit up. Like literally it doesn't matter. You create another name and you can kind of make this entity this thing, right? And I used the entity to kind of package all of the things that we were doing, right? And we may not have made money from it, but it would have been a project or a client or some initiative, right? So I think the initiatives I started in college were a great first foray into learning what it felt like to create something from nothing. Because if you think about it, that entity now has a life of its own, right? You have people working on it or working towards a goal that's associated with that company. And at the end of the day, company is what? A company is a collection of all of us believing that it exists, right? A company is the product but that people think is from that company. The company is not an actual physical thing, right? And so it's what we collectively believe is such. And that's why I think companies are movements. Companies are a collective emotional being. And if you create a company that represents these values that you also embody, that you're excited by, and you want people to also align to, then magical things start happening.
So from your experience during those startups in college, was that your big takeaway? Was the company is a magical thing?
You can invent shit from nothing, right? You can get people to rally around this imaginary entity that literally doesn't mean anything until they all collectively put their meaning into it.
Okay.
And it's just an amazing thing when you and again, I really now in 2018 am a little more hesitant to advocate for the fake it till you make it thing because you guys heard about Theranos. There's a lot of lives you can affect if you do shit like that. But more, I wouldn't say fake it till you make it. It's more like, share the vision, excite people, but be very clear that you're working together to aim for that vision. And that vision should always be beyond you. And that's what I learned from this. And the other big takeaway was that you literally learn the best by doing, right? And that's why I find it very ironic, and please don't take this to offense if you're doing it today, but studying entrepreneurship, I find, is the most futile exercise ever. It's like trying to study how to ride a bike. Let me read all these pages about riding a bike, but never actually riding the fucking bike. And I think you need to ride the bike with learning about it too. And I think most of your learnings in my book I talk about it, it's the MBA of doing shit, right? The more you do shit, the more you will stumble and fall, but you will learn through that, and that is the best MBA you could ever ask for.
So you started Kiip at 19. First off, what is Kiip?
Yeah, so started the company in 2010. Kiip in a nutshell, it's rewards in mobile apps. We decided that ads were incredibly annoying and interruptive. I don't think any of us has ever looked at an ad on your phone and went like, oh my God, let me do this. Like, that has never happened, right? And we're laughing because it's true. So we think about that, you go, that's a really big problem. If someone's producing something, which is the ad, and yet no one wants it, why does it still exist? Right? It's because the incentives are all messed up, and I could go on for hours about how the advertising industry is screwed up. But we said, let's change it for the better. Let's just convert the ad into a reward, something that actually gave back. So our whole concept was imagine you could, finish a run in a running app, and Gatorade could reward you. makes sense, right? It just makes perfect sense. So we started off with that concept. Obviously, it's gotten a lot more complicated, bigger, and there's more scale to it. But the core of what we do is still around this idea of rewarding in the moment and converting ads into something more engaging. So we're now integrated into 11,000 apps. So we help app developers monetize. So you have apps, which you make them, I think, for clients, but whoever wants to monetize with ads, we're a better alternative. And we also help them make money off of data. And then with brands, we actually have them buy in to these apps, and then they are able to advertise more effectively. Like, you think about a Coke or a Pepsi or a McDonald's, they're just blowing all this money on these, really kind of dumb ads that sit on, whether it be billboards or magazines that they have no idea who it's showing up to, and they're not going for, actual precision and effectiveness. And we think that we can build that model up better using our engagement mechanism. So that's basically the model. So we work with app developers, brands, and end users, people who actually redeem these rewards.
So when you first got the idea of Kiip,
Yeah.
how did you form the team and make your MVP?
So it was all serendipity. So I always have this line of generating serendipity. Like, you can create your own luck. And it comes from, honestly, gathering yourself with like-minded people and being able to find these collisions. Tony Hsieh calls it collisions. There's all sorts of different ways to call it, but you actually end up running into people who would actually want to do something with you. So what happened with me is when I actually graduated from college, I moved down to San Francisco. I worked at a company some of you may remember called Digg, digg.com. It was the big competitor to Reddit. Reddit ended up winning. But at Digg, the only engineer I actually worked with for a project is this guy, Courtney Girton. And he ended up leaving a month before I got laid off. So I got laid off at Digg because all sorts of things happened and they lost a lot of money and then I ended up getting cut. And then when I got laid off, I got this idea for Kiip. I was like, hey, yeah, ads are kind of whatever. Maybe we should reward people. And then I talked to Courtney, who happened to just be the only engineer that I knew. And I was like, hey man, I have this idea. He's like, oh, funny you should mention, because I'm building a game right now called Schemo. And we actually had this idea of implementing rewards into Schemo. So what if we combine forces and I can build a prototype and you go get some brands and let's see if this could work. And I went out and I got vitamin water and I got pop chips, and those were first two customers, and we implemented those rewards.
So you got those customers before even having a product?
Yeah, because you just tell them we'll have it in like 2 months. Yeah. Because by the time the deal closes, we'll already have built the freaking product, right? So this is the thing that this is why I always tell my team, is just like, they're like, but we don't have it right now. I said, these big companies take months to close deals. And as long as you have the commitment and you know the money is coming, you take the time to build the product, right? Now, obviously, there's a huge asterisk, right? Because first of all, if you fuck up, right? If you actually try to deliver after those 2 months and it doesn't work, you've basically blacklisted yourself, right? So you cannot mess up. The first pilots are the most critical. We got very lucky in that we actually ended up getting an investment from the CMO of Vitamin Water and the CEO of Pop Chips. Oh. So it was all nepotism, right? So you want nepotism. You want people to invest and buy, right? That's the most important thing.
So one of the challenges that I've seen, just to explain to some people, is you're kind of entering a two-sided market. You're entering a two-sided market. Yeah. And to explain what a two-sided market, it's like, if you look at Uber, there's drivers, and then there's the people that want the customers. So you have to recruit the drivers, and you also have to recruit the customers. And in your case, you have to get the advertisers, and you have to get
the app developers.
The developers. So how did you solve that problem?
So easy. You pay for one. You incentivize one side first. But the eat is not easy. Actually, it's easier said than done, because you have to choose which side to do it with. And at the end of the day, you kind of have to be like a luck of the draw. Like it's 50-50, right? You pick which one to pay for first. So we chose the brands. So we bought $10,000 worth of gift cards from Starbucks, Macy's, Best Buy, you name it. And then we started putting these rewards into the games. And then what we did was we went to the brands and said, hey, Macy's, hey, Best Buy, you're getting a lot of people redeeming your rewards. All of a sudden, if you cut these rewards, we run out, then people are going to get really mad. So you want to keep doing it? That's it.
That's brilliant.
That's it.
And you actually had mentioned you had some, you got some people invested. How did you go about raising funds? That's the challenge that when I talk to all entrepreneurs that they encounter.
Yeah, so how many of you here are trying to raise money for a startup or have already raised, or they're all high school students?
No, there's a couple.
Okay.
You're bashful there. I know John is too.
Don't be shy. So you guys have heard of, you're always raising, right? As an entrepreneur, you're always raising money. Always. I'm raising right now, like literally every day. But what that means is that you're not going to everyone, hey, invest in my company. You're building relationships and you're showing them that you could potentially create a lot of value from an equity standpoint, or from an enterprise value standpoint if this person were to invest now to help you get to that next point. I think the problem is a lot of entrepreneurs view investment in a very skewed fashion. I think the issue is we view that an investor is like a rich person with money that will come down from the heavens like an angel and then pick you up, and then all of a sudden your life is great. Complete bullshit. And in fact, the investor, this is what I like to try to craft a perspective, is when you go to that angel investor, they're not the angel. You are their angel because you're about to make them a fuckload of money. Think about it. They're going to put in 10 grand and in 6 years it's going to be worth 100 grand, which is not bad.
So what you said your first one was Pop Secret and Vitamin Water.
Pop chips and vitamin water. Well, so we raised $300,000 in our seed.
So how did you sell them how did you sell those guys?
Well, first of all, in the early stages, right, when you're first starting off, they're not investing in your product, right? They're investing in you, right? And I believe that in the beginning, the relationship is all about love. In fact, it always is. You want them to fall in love with you. You want them to fall in love with your energy, the fact that you're so passionate about it, that the fact that they know that you will persevere and work your ass off no matter what, right? That's what happened with us, right? Because it was me, 2 other dudes, we're like hacking away. We happened to have a category that the investors also believed had a huge potential upside, which is also very important. The general category you're in can't be like something super limited, right? Like, I don't know, I can't come up with something right now. But like, it's like, maybe that's a bad example. But like, you need to come up with a category where there's potentially a lot of potential upside. In our case, it was mobile advertising, right? And they knew that smartphone growth was there. They knew that there would be a need to put ads in that smartphone growth. So at the end of the day, they saw that category as well. But if it was another team, they might have hesitated. You have to understand, because we all came from Dig, right? We already had this reputation of being able to execute. And in fact, when we were raising money, I got a flurry of phone calls, right? Kevin Rose, who's the founder of Dig, Jay, the CEO of Dig at the time, they called me. They're like, are you raising money for your startup? I said, how did you know I'm raising money for my startup? They're like, oh, because the True Ventures guys just called us and was checking in on you. So what happens is there's a lot of back channeling. That's why I think sometimes there's a reason why being in San Francisco is valuable, not forever. In the early stages of raising, it's important because you build this relationship with the community, you get your name known in the group, and it is a bit, unfortunately, at least at the time we were doing it, was a bit of a boys club. Now it's obviously gotten a lot better. In fact, now I think there's many funds and many remits for funds that are intentionally focused on finding diverse founders, which is actually you should take to your advantage if you are of a minority or of the other gender. So in that way, I think that the weight is on the other side. But yeah, we definitely convinced them on the vision, the passion, and the excitement behind the idea. But here's the other thing too. I have never, and this is complete farce if you hear this, I have never seen from a first meeting, a cold meeting with an investor, a term sheet. That just never happens. By the way, if you do hear those stories, it's because that founder exited for $1 billion in their previous startup. There's a reason for it. So if you think you'll walk into a meeting and the investor will be like, oh my God, this sounds amazing, here's a term sheet, that'll never happen. What happens is you show them a track record of execution. So the only way this will ever happen is you, over the time period, and at least takes 6 months, by the way, I've seen this. You meet the investor. Say, hey, listen, great to meet you. I want to tell you what I'm working on. Here's what I'm working on. But no, we're not raising right now. But really, you are raising. Like, you would love the money, obviously. But you just say, no, we're not raising right now. We don't want to get distracted, which is the truth, really, because sometimes, no, all the time, fundraising is distracting. And you say, yeah, we're not raising right now. We're really working on heads down, executing, whatever, all this bullshit. And then every month, you send them an email. Say, hey, such and such, we just launched this feature, we just got this article, we just closed this customer next month. We just did this and that, next month. All this execution, just executing. Then the next time you say, hey, yeah, we should grab coffee because we've gotten a lot of inbound. And you make this shit up. It may not be true. But we've got a lot of inbound. It's true. Got a lot of inbound, and we have found it very hard to not take a serious look at what fundraising could look like for us right now. And then you have a meeting with them. They go, wow, we've really seen you execute the last 4 months. Like, this is great. Like, what are you guys trying to raise? 2 million, right? They'll be like, that's not a lot. Like, you should raise more. Well, yeah. Well, could you help? No, but these things start happening, and I don't want to sound like you're like tricking them or you're committing fraud or anything. But the whole point is, investors are all about FOMO, and they are all about execution. Because they want to know.
FOMO is fear of missing out.
Yeah. Dude, they're not that old. I mean, come on.
That was actually for John. Yeah. That was John in the back.
Is you want them to know that you have a track record of executing. That's the number one rule. Because if they just met you, they don't know if you're able to execute, right? Like that's the number one question. So you show that to them. You keep them on that list. That's hopefully you guys take this back and you do this. But there is no such thing as the fairy tale, first meeting term sheet. That relationship has to be built over time.
So somehow you randomly meet the.
Yeah, I met Rohan, the CMO of Vitamin One at the time, and then Keith Belling, the CEO of Pop Chips and the founder, March of 2010.
Was it like a random meeting? Or?
I was at Dig.
Okay.
I met them at a rooftop at Stubbs at our party.
Okay.
And I just randomly met them. They were buddies at the time. They still are buddies. And I was like, hey, what's up? They're like, oh, you're at Dig, whatever, cool. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm in business development. And then months later, I hang out with Ro in New York, and I tell him about the idea. He's like, "Oh, that's crazy. Vitamin Water obviously buys a lot of ads. Like, maybe we should try your thing." Mm-hmm. And at the time, we were raising the $300,000, and they put in a bit of money as well, and that's it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's a process. It takes months.
It takes time. You guys have heard, from the great philosopher Ludacris, the line, "If you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you get money." Right, so it's true. Like you when you ask for money, there's this hint of desperation. You always want to be in a position where you don't necessarily show that you need it. And one thing I should remind you is everyone has money in their pocket here. Money is not special. It's who it's from, right? At the end of the day, you can find money anywhere. This is why I have to explain to people. They're like, oh well, fuck, we just lost this investor. Fuck, our life is over. I was like, dude, there's so many goddamn people that want to invest. There's so many people with money.
All right, so with that said,
yeah.
What's your advice to people I know a few entrepreneurs here that are raising money. What's your advice to them in raising money?
Keep in contact. The whole execution track record is really important.
But how do they meet where do they meet? I think
people?
Where do they meet the people?
Have you guys heard of LinkedIn Tinder? So you go on LinkedIn and you add these fuckers, and then they accept or they don't accept. And by the way, let me just share something too. For you to frame your mindset, have you guys heard these investors sometimes on Twitter, they go, man, stop adding me on LinkedIn and stop emailing me pitches. I'm like, that's your fucking job. Why are you, it's like me at McDonald's going, I don't want you to order food. Right? This is why this is my big pet peeve is when a VC, like a venture capitalist, what would you think their LPs would say? We're like, hey, Joe, you literally on Twitter just said you don't want pitches? This is your fucking deal flow. This is how you make business. This is how you get me returns. And you don't want people to pitch you? This is so bad. So first of all, if those guys ever do that to you, cut them out, right? Because they're not the people you want anyways. A good investor will take your pitch. We'll have that conversation. We'll listen to you attentively. We'll not check their phone every 3 seconds when they're meeting with you, right? Those are the good, and there are a lot of them. Just you. There's more good apples than there are bad. But the best way to start to add these people, email them, get intros. I mean, you guys have heard of this. Intros are the best. And the way you get intros is you intentionally connect with people who are hubs. Hubs are what I call networking people who literally happen to know everyone. You are one of them.
I'm a hub.
So when you meet a hub, you make sure you become really good friends with him, right, or her. So that's really important. And that way you get these intros and you get these soft lobs and you start going from it. Like it's a gradual process. And then what happens is even if an investor rejects you, what's the question you ask at the end of the meeting, right? Do you know any other investors that could be interested in this project? What's the worst that could happen? They go, no. Okay, fine. They go, yeah, actually, no, there's 2 other people. Because sometimes maybe they don't invest in your category. And this is true. Because a lot of investors, such as myself, if you're doing some ag tech thing, I honestly wouldn't know how to assess if what you're doing is going to have value. I just don't know because I don't have enough domain expertise and I can't even help you, right? So they want to be able to invest in things they know they can help. But then I might know people who have invested in ag tech, or I might know someone who has invested in health tech or fintech, and those are the people that I would bring in. So don't take this stuff personally and try your best to keep them as the advocate for you moving forward, right? It's the most important thing.
Okay, that's great advice. Well, actually, Kiip has done well. How have you scaled? What's your scaling process?
Oh man, every business scales in its own way. To be honest, we scaled the classic Silicon Valley way, which is raise a ton of money and dilute the shit out of yourself, and then realize you raised too much money, and then immediately go, shit, I need to be profitable and cut costs and focus on sustainable growth. That's what happened to us. So that's not the model I would recommend you. I think the way to scale today in 2018 is definitely get core pillar customers, repeat customers that see value in your product, will keep paying for it, and hold those people and those customers and those companies dear to you, and then use that traction to obviously raise some funds, so then of course hire salespeople to then go and scale. That's one way to do it. Or you do the just gradual scaling, sort of linear scaling. It's not exactly the easiest to do non-linear scaling, right? Because these are viral loops and effects that not every business has the luxury of being able to experience. So I think you shouldn't expect that your product is so amazing that all of a sudden everyone wants to use it and it's natural, right? You have to understand, even the products that you thought were natural viral loops were not. Tinder is a perfect example. So I happen to know the founders of Tinder who just sued for $2 billion, and I'm like, yeah, you're gonna get money, so I get to ask you for money later. I'm kidding, but they already have money. But
the relationship.
Yeah, exactly. The relationship. It's how this is the cycle of life, right? That you have people who make money in the tech world, and the best part about the tech world is that wealth is not displayed through this ostentatiousness. Wealth is expressed through investment and help, which is why this is such a great community. So anyways, back to Tinder. Did you know that they literally went school by school and they hosted parties and they incentivized, their game was, and please don't take offense to this, incentivize what were, call it generally considered attractive women to, because beauty's in the eye of the beholder and whatever, to then, and through sororities, okay, to download Tinder, and their goal was let's have more generally accepted attractive women on Tinder first and then bring in the men. That was their objective. And they went sorority by sorority, school by school. They went literally just manual, just literally showing up and getting them down. That's how they started. It wasn't this magical thing where all of a sudden everyone had Tinder, So there's always hard work in the beginning.
That's all Facebook went campus to campus.
Yeah, exactly. Airbnb, yeah, same thing. City by city, door to door. There is no easy way out. In fact, the only thing I could tell you is if it ever feels too easy, you're probably doing it wrong. Because if it was so fucking easy, everyone else would have done it. It's deceptive, right? That's what you should always remember. If it was that easy, so many other people would have done it before, right?
All right, so I have to say, you're pretty wise beyond your years.
Thank you.
Did you have a mentor? Are you well read?
I think what happened was I just grew up really fast because I was forced to be around people older than me at an early age, right? Starting from when I was in grade 1, I skipped to grade 3, and grade 6 skipped to grade 8, then skipped to grade 10, and then skipped to grade 12. And I have an older brother who's 4 years older than me, so I was able to kind of observe a lot of the stuff he had. And then also as a younger, I was always younger necessarily in the room, and now I'm not. I feel old because there's 16-year-olds here. is you value experience and you actually are inquisitive and truly wanting to learn from someone who may be older than you who has done it before. I think, unfortunately, the tech world gets a bad rap because you have these young kids that run around going like, fuck experience, fuck all these old people. Why do I have to listen to them? And that is the biggest mistake you could ever do. Because the one thing that I think folks who have done it before can help you do is save a shitload of time. Why do you think they're old? They wasted all this time to get to where they are. I'm kidding. But the whole point is, I'm kidding. But they will have help. They can help you save a lot of time. And that is one thing that they're more than willing to impart that knowledge to you, right? And I think that's, I guess for me, that was the number one thing.
So you basically learned like through, I won't say osmosis, but observing other people as opposed to, did you have a mentor?
Yeah, I've had many mentors. I mean, like these are people who have started companies where, I mean, so just so you know, your best mentors are not billionaires that are 85. Just so you know. Your mentors are people who literally did what you're doing right now 6 months before you.
Okay.
Because these people are your cheat sheet. Because they literally just did it. It's the best. Like I had early stage when we first started, someone who had just raised a C round like a year before I did. An A round a year before I did.
So he gave you advice on how to raise money, the relationship.
Yeah, so all these people, I'd be like, hey, so can you just share with me the term sheet you had? Like how do you structure it? Like they're like, yeah, no problem. I just did all this shit. It's awesome, right? You don't have to redo everything, right? Like people have done it before and they're willing to help you, right? So find someone who's 6 months ahead of you. That's honestly the best way. Because the 85-year-old billionaire got rich before the telephone was invented. Like, I mean, they literally they can't relate to you.
Yes.
They have no idea. They're like, oh, we built the first railroad station. Like, fuck, like there's obviously, like, I can't make money from that.
Okay. This is totally something different. So this is actually blockchain month in Startup Brian, and I was like thinking, damn, I booked Brian. But I was actually going through your web thing and your LinkedIn profile, and Kiip is putting together a blockchain strategy. Can you kind of give us a summary of what that's about?
Yeah, so we are doing blockchain. Yes. We call it Coin, K-O-I-N. We're starting, it's a token, it's a media and advertising token. You can buy ads using this token. We are very aware that everyone's jumping on the bandwagon. We're very aware that ICOs are typically associated with fraudsters and drug dealers. We're very aware that no one seems to understand what it is, yet they're all doing it. Very aware of these things. However, I am a technologist at heart. I'm sure many of you in the room are. I get excited by new technology. I have this duty as a tech company to use new technologies to serve clients better, much like yourself. Therefore, the logic then states we should explore this technology and decide if it is a legitimate technology that we can leverage to assist our clients. The answer we arrived to was yes. Okay. Therefore, we started to roll out products for our clients. So we launched a pilot with AB InBev, which is the holding company that owns Budweiser, Bud Light, Stella Artois. It's a blockchain transparency product. We call it single ledger, where all the ad campaign data we write to Ethereum. We let other parties in the programmatic and advertising supply chain write to this same ledger. We reconcile discrepancies in the impression data, so how many impressions were served for that ad campaign, automatically through this single ledger product. We save hours at the end of every ad campaign, because what happens is so basically why reconciliation is important is because when you pay for your ads, you pay for what was served impressions, but there's always different numbers, like the SSP or the supply side platform, the demand side platform, all these folks have different numbers, so it takes hours at the end of every campaign to reconcile. So we chose the simplest way and the obvious solution to make people feel like there was an easy solve with using blockchain technology to help affect their hours that they're spending to try to reconcile. So we launched this product in June. And I'm a marketer at heart, as some of you probably realized, and you need to have big brands to buy into something in order for other big brands to start paying attention. So that was it. Yes, I admit, I called up my friend who happened to work at AB InBev, who happens to run media, and asked him, hey man, I have this great idea. Let's try to pilot this together. Let's try to announce it at Cannes. And you might go, well, that sounds really simple, but I built this relationship with Lucas over the last 7 years. He's seen me roll out innovation projects that have led to true scaled initiatives. So it wasn't just me going to him and selling him some snake oil. And then also the co-benefit was that he would be positioned as an innovation leader and that we could both go to market with something that could position both of us as being at the top of the innovation food chain. These were all beneficial things. So I made sure I positioned in a way that would have him want to support it. And it ended up benefiting both of us in massive ways. We got covered in the Wall Street Journal, we got covered in Adweek, we got covered in CoinDesk, which is the biggest publication for anything crypto and anything blockchain. So we're very fortunate.
Has it gone live or is it still in beta?
It's live.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the results been?
They saved like 30% costs.
Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, a novel way of using blockchain.
Yeah.
It looks like you're also doing some investments.
Yeah.
So tell me what's your thesis for investor? What types of things are you investing in?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I joined the board of a startup that I also invested in. It's an ed tech company called Unfiltered. It's now public. They're based in New Zealand, but they actually are now moved over to New York. I've invested in 3 other startups in the last 6 months. They're all in ed tech and fintech. And the reason why is because I'm just curious. So it's not because I know a lot about ed tech or fintech, it's because I'm curious. And I'll tell you why, because I'm personally, as you can imagine, very curious about the future of education and technology. More so from a personal standpoint, because I just skipped a bunch of grades, but I'm like, okay, in the future, how do kids learn? Right? How will we help a child that is just getting into high school, let's say right now, deal with this, rapidly changing technological landscape, political landscape, creative landscape, AI landscape? How does that even work? So I just try to invest to learn. So that's been my thesis, and I invest primarily into the people, right? My thesis is the same that I know that people had on me, which was, will you persevere? Even if something happens, some catastrophic failure happens, can I count on you to reinvent yourself, pick the pieces back up, and keep charging, right?
So if someone's pitching to you, do you really listen to their idea, or are you really looking at the person?
I look at the person. I look at their background. I look at where they came from. I look at just their desire to build versus talk a lot, right? I assess how good they are at attracting talent, right? If they're a lone wolf, that's a bad sign. If they're really good at getting people around them to build stuff, that's a really good sign. Do they have an addictive personality? Are they someone that people just want to hang out around? That's a great sign, because that means they attract people, right? We want to be a magnet as a founder. Are they almost kind of a hidden genius, like a hidden brilliant person? Because some people don't realize how smart they are, right? And then what you do is you help them realize that, and then you help them leverage that. That's it. Those are the main things. And I intentionally invest in pre-seed. Earliest of rounds. Yeah.
Boy, can I send some companies to you?
Yeah. No. And by the way, you know why I do that, and why I think you'll find other entrepreneurs like me who do that? Because we know what it takes to step by step to get to that next round. And I'm actually making my return in a way, right? Because if you raise your $100,000 at a $500,000 valuation, right, or whatever, which is not terrible at the end of the day if you have like a pre-product or customer phase, pre-revenue. And I know exactly what you need to get your first 10 customers, that then you can raise your seed round, your actual seed round at like $1 million. I just doubled my money, right? But the problem with that is that it's not scalable. Like, I can't help that many companies. I can only work with so many because I have a day job, right? So that's been the challenge, is that I'm trying to figure out how to manage these, because you have people then pinging you literally every other day, and I'm like, guys, I'm in a meeting, I have real shit to do. So I think it's trying to keep it managed is the most important thing.
Okay.
But it's been really interesting. Actually, being on the other side has taught me a lot, because now I know, sitting on that board, for example, Jake, the CEO, is asking me questions, and normally I'm asking my board questions, right? But he's asking me, and I'm going shit, yeah, I'm on your board. I gotta I didn't have an answer. I need to find the answer.
You got to Yoda up.
I got to Yoda it up. But then you realize that the reason why they asked you to join the board was not because they expect you to be Yoda all the time, but they want to bring you along the journey, and they value your perspective, right? So you can bounce ideas off each other, type of thing. So, and then hopefully I can save him time because he's 20. He's 20 and he's raised 2.8 million. Very similar story. So I'm like, let me help you save some time. And in the 7 months I've been on the board, I think I've helped with that value.
It's like a mini Wong.
Yeah, except he's not that small. Like he's not skinny. Like I was like super tiny. Like when we were kids.
All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the audience here for questions.
So I have two questions for you. They're kind of related. It seems like when you have investors, there's really three types. There's the type who are just like, I want money, I don't care how you do it. There's, I have experience in this, I want to impart it to you. And then there's, as you said earlier, there's things I want to invest into, learn more about it. As you've gone through the various stages of Kiip and the other things you've been involved in, have you searched out different types of investors? You look for the ones who have a lot of experience in the beginning, and later on, you're like, you don't need to know anything about this, I have the knowledge, I have the experience. And then secondly, at what point in the experience do you feel like you got enough experience and knowledge in that space for when someone comes to you and says, hey, I don't think it's a great idea to advertise Buffalo Wild Wings in a fit tracker app. And you're like, no, it's perfect. It's right in their week. They'll buy it all day long. For you to have that knowledge to say, we know what we're doing, thanks but no thanks, and any advice you may want to give us.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, there's a common thing you would like all your investors to have, which is that they respect and believe in your ability to make the right decision. That's bottom line. Any investor ever questions that, get the fuck out of my face. Because I started this thing, I am the one who's going to call the shots. You believe in me being able to make those decisions. That's why you're investing in the first place. I don't want you to invest because you think you can make decisions better than I can. That is the number one no-no. But to answer your question directly, yes, we have had a variety of these investors. In the beginning, yes, you want people to have domain expertise. I do find that the people who are the loudest about how great they are at something are typically not. So just remember, if someone's like, yeah, I'm so great, give me advisor shares and I'm going to put in like $5,000.
Huge.
Get out of my face, right? Like most of the time you want people who are just so rich that they don't care. They're just doing this because they're just trying to find something to do. You know, like that's really that's the type of person you want. Trust me. Yeah, and then honestly, I value all opinions. Like I want someone to be contrarian, right? In fact, I told my board, I tell people, our angel investors, I'm like, I didn't hire you to brown nose me, or I didn't hire you. I didn't bring you on. Actually, in fact, it is like that when you're bringing them on. You're like, I'm bringing you into the team. You're part of the team now, right? And I want you to be honest with me. I want you to give it to me straight. I want you to challenge me. I want you to show me that there's another way to do it, right? But you need to trust that I will make the best decision at the end of the day, right? That's kind of the end goal. So yeah, I think that's the best way to look at it, is always have that mix and always make sure you have a good wealth of opinions around you. And you always want them to be, the incentives are that they don't always say yes to you. Right? This is why sometimes if you only listen to your employees, that's a bad thing. Because they all have to say yes to you, because otherwise they're going to fire them, right? Or they think that way, right? Like not everyone's going to tell you no. So you want to make sure you have people around you that aren't necessarily on your payroll. And that's really important.
Brian?
Yeah, so I was wondering how much of your advertising is location-based, and do the games track where everybody's going at all the time, or are they kind of, or like if an advertiser wants to buy just Sacramento, do you not know because we just buy it on the whole platform, or what is the deal with location tracking and all that stuff?
There's various levels of location awareness, to say it. There's everything from your IP address, which is just from the IP that your carrier has assigned your phone that gives you the ability to target by city, basically. And then if the app asks you for long and lat, then that's what we would get as part of targeting as well. And then if an app is actually persistent location tracking based on something like a dating app or a running app or something like that, then that data is leveraged for location targeting as well. So it's always various levels, but we don't impose anything. We only take what the app gives us, and then we leverage that to make a targeted ad campaign. But there's obviously location is important. Like, we're not going to advertise Dunkin' Donuts here, right? Doesn't make any sense. And especially if you're in suburbia and it's really kind of hard to like just walk to Home Depot, we might not put Home Depot in front of you. So there's certain things that we'll think about in that way.
Some student questions?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was just going to ask, what's your experience really with investing in companies that still haven't built, a minimum viable product? Is that something you've seen a lot, or kind of shocked?
Well, when I say pre-seed, it means pre-customers or pre-final product, but having something visual that shows what you're going for is incredibly important. Because I'm a designer as well, like I learned Photoshop and InDesign and Illustrator, and the number one thing I found, and maybe now you guys are using, the kids are using like Canva and all these fucking apps these days, you can design your prototype and make sure that visually it's understandable. I think that's the most important thing. And in fact, I'd say investors are very visual, just like any human being. So I would forego the 30-page business plan for one image. Honestly, like that one image you showed to them, yeah, that makes sense, yeah. I could order pizza like I ordered Uber. Uber for pizza, okay. But like these are, which is a great idea, by the way. These would be, it probably exists.
So it's on Silicon Valley.
Uber Eats, yeah, I'll probably see that.
It's on Silicon Valley.
It really is
actually.
on Silicon Valley? I don't watch that show. Yeah, so something like that. So visuals are important.
So how do you avoid or overcome entrepreneur exhaustion and fatigue? Like, because all of us have other jobs, or often have other jobs, than going out and pitching, like our founders are developers and they're designers and they're salespeople too, but they're also going out and pitching, and it's exhausting. I'm someone who ran, a startup myself, and one of the reasons I kind of got out of being a lone founder was because I had 7 jobs. How do you get past that or avoid it?
Yeah. So my book actually has a lot of, for some reason, actually, by the way, I have a free copy of the book that I'm going to give to the person with the best question. And I will sign it and kiss it. I'm kidding. Kidding. But there's surprisingly, and this is after the fact, I realize there's surprisingly a lot of literature in there about taking time off. And I'll give you guys a perfect example. Guess where I'm going after this tonight? South Lake Tahoe. Yeah, and I'm going to spend 2 days next to the lake, and go hiking and go kayaking and go skinny dipping and shit.
It's cold.
Yeah, I know. That's why. But what I say is there needs to be a healthy system of the 3 Ds, right? The delegate, defer, delete. Have you guys heard of this? It's very simple. That's your efficiency matrix. What can I delegate? What can I defer? And what can I delete? That will help you kind of manage this. And I always advocate at least once, for those who have the most intense schedules, you have to give it yourself at least 1 day a week of complete disconnect. And I know that sounds like a tall order, especially when you're in crazy moments, which I totally agree. So right now, like I told you, we're fundraising. I'm not going to take a full day off, right? It might be half day or whatever. That's all I can really afford. But there will be weeks where you can take, there is a week. Just think about it. Can I shut off for 6 hours and the world doesn't explode, right? And the good news is that it won't. And the good news is if you are in the industry we're in, it's not a matter of life or death. Like in our case with ads, okay, fuck, a bad ad goes out, click-through rates suck, but is someone gonna fucking die? No, so I don't care, right? Like, but yeah, if you're in healthcare, sure, yeah, someone might die. That's why I'm not in that space. But you're like, no one's gonna die. That's kind of the best way to look at it. But yeah, definitely take that time. I call it take a splurge day. Splurging on everything you love. So I love, just in no particular order, wine, jacuzzis, skiing, sushi, ramen, classical music. I'm going to try to do all 6 of those in one day. I can't really do skiing on Saturday, but I can certainly do the rest. Yeah, so just think about those types of things.
What was something that you learned the hard way, like ever since you started building your company?
That's a good question.
A lot. I could go on, but the hardest lessons I learned were around people and around not trusting my gut on hiring someone. And it's the classic advice of like, just because you want to fill a seat, you might hire a B player or a C player, and you're just going to regret it. It's going to come back and bite you. But when I mean gut, it's like when you first meet someone, usually in the first 10 to 20 seconds, you get a pretty good vibe, right? And you might ignore that vibe because on paper, they're like the most amazing person ever, right? But then when you meet them, you're like, this person kind of has some issues, right? Like there's really rubbing me off the wrong way. Don't ignore that feeling ever is the only thing I would tell you.
He's looking at me when he says that, so.
Yeah, this guy's like, let's sketchy. But like, honestly, that's the hardest lessons that I learned because you won't know sometimes until a year later and all the carnage that they created without you even realizing. And I'll one day wake up and be like, fuck, this person did what? We had someone steal from the company for 2 years.
Wow.
$100,000.
Fire the accountant.
No, and this is the thing, they were the accountant. No joke. I know. That's the thing, right? And you 2 years later, you wake up and be like, I'm never going to get that $100,000 back. We could sue this person to oblivion. They already spent the money. What are we going to do? Like, do we want to ruin this person's life? No. I mean, like, well, part of me wanted to, but like, I mean, nothing ever good came out of taking revenge on someone, right? So it's like, I take the blame because I didn't listen to my gut, right? So that's hopefully helpful. Always listen to your gut on people. Sure, yeah. Go for it.
My name is and I go to Liberty Academy. These are my friends.
Yeah, these are great.
And right now in our entrepreneurship class, our administration and our teachers are basically teaching us how to network and how to make connections. So what is some advice you can give us about connections and how to build relationships?
So have you ever gotten to, and please don't, this is not personal, but have you gone a day and be like, now I'm making my first interaction with you. Now I'm going to order a meal. Now I'm going to have small talk with you. Now I'm going to establish a personal relationship. Now I'm going to figure out if we share values in the same family system. I think when you give things names, it fucks with you, right? Because you go, oh, it's networking. It just fucks with you because you're like, oh, is this networking or is this just like I'm talking to someone, right? So my only advice is stop giving the shit names, make it feel natural, and then know that the first time you interact with someone, just be yourself and not be like, I'm here to network with you. Like, I want to know what you do or how much money you make or how you can help me. Because when you go into a conversation and the first thought yours is like, how can this person help me? You've already failed. The first thing you should do in any conversation is what? I'm curious to learn about you. Mm-hmm. Tell me about you. Where'd you come from? What do you have to do? What's your personality like? Do you have any siblings? Like, where'd you grow up? Like, what are you doing now? Like, these are the things. Natural curiosity is the best way to connect with someone. That's it. But I really despise it when it's like, let's give this shit names. Because in any other thing in life, it's like when you're going on a family vacation, it's like, hello, mother and father, we are now having family bonding time. Like, fuck you, it's not that. It's literally, we're just hanging out. That's it.
What motivates you to get up in the morning and keep doing what you're doing? What motivates you to take those steps to where you are right now?
I just like to create things and help people feel good and feel meaningful and have purpose, and I like to win. I mean, these are things that just I like, and waking up in the morning, these things could happen and just have the hope that they could, and you live through your day. Yeah, that's it. I mean, there's no all sort of altruistic purpose or anything. It's just like, this is my MO. And it doesn't have to be super fancy, right? Just whatever you feel, makes you feel good, that's what you should just keep aiming for every day.
So in your company, did you ever have a point in the beginning where you figured out you needed to pivot? Let me give you an example where we are. We're building a mobile app. We're about 2.5 years into building it. And there's this one nuance of the app that we filed a patent for 3 years ago. The patent was issued this year. We're seriously considering abandoning going to market with the mobile app and then just leveraging what's in the patent, which is protectable, to create a platform as a service provider. So instead of B2C, really be B2B, leverage that patent because no one else can do it exactly. I mean, you know how patents work. So do we pivot, or does it look like we can't execute on the mobile app to like the investor community, like you never finish anything kind of thing? Or do we say, let's not waste any more time in here. This is a great idea. Let's pivot and let's go for it. And this is something we can raise money on.
All right. So what's your name?
Michael.
Michael. First of all, never use the word pivot. Okay?
Okay.
So this is my personal opinion. You guys can disagree with me. It's always you learn something and you're making adjustments and you're growing with this learning. You're taking this new data and you're adapting. Because I think the P word implies you're just like, fuck, I'm just literally going the other way. Like it's just not the best way to look at it. And in fact, the story here is that no, you were never starting with the app. You were always building the platform. The app was just a test as the first application of this platform.
We're involved.
Yes. And you realized the app was this first test. You wanted to see how people would react. And guess what? The usage data or the fact that people were excited about that app was great. But then we thought, well, what if we had 1,000 of these apps built on the same platform, right? Yeah. That's why we started building more on the platform. That's your story.
Got it.
Never a fucking pivot, dude.
Did your vision change?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but you say, we learned, we adapted, the market's changed. We always had the vision of engagement in mobile apps, but how we do this wasn't just games. We always thought that any app could work. Yeah, the first vision was fucking games. Then all of a sudden we're like, fitness app, yeah, because we were planning to make it about mobile in general. You know, I mean, you know how it is. It evolves, dude. And so you never want to come into a conversation being like, you can say we learned, but it's not the mistake. It's not that it's about the learnings helped craft your future vision, how you grow, right? That's just naturally what you're supposed to do as an entrepreneur, right? That's part of your job. Yeah.
So now, move forward, it's 2018. What is a technology that perhaps the students, what are some of the technologies they should be looking to that are going to be trailblazing and as they're looking at ideas for startup companies, what would you predict are going to be the big things?
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts on this. As an entrepreneur, you kind of have two paths. You can either fool yourself into thinking that the thing you're doing is truly trailblazing and completely brand new that no one's ever done before, which, by the way, never happens. You're always the second guy to come up with it, trust me, or gal. Or you can be the entrepreneur that takes something that you observe and go, this is a little bit off. The way that the person did it the first time really wasn't the best. Or even the way they're doing it now, as much as everyone seems to accept it, isn't really the best. And I want to create a new way to do it. So iteration and improvement. So you can take two paths, and I think both are not wrong. You can choose either. But I think the most important thing to learn about is not necessarily the fact that it's just a brand new tech per se. Like, we could list all the trendy ones now, right? Like AI, blockchain, VR, chatbots, fucking drones. Yeah, I mean, go on and on and on. I could go on. Quantum shit, whatever. But what I want you to think about is which one combined with something aligns the most with you as a person. So let me explain. I didn't get to tell you guys that I played a shitload of video games growing up. Yeah. Counter-Strike. Whatever. Dude, that was trendy in my day, okay? I don't know what you kids are doing. Fortnite or whatever. Fuck it. Whatever. I don't even know what that is, okay? And then I played a lot of video games. I designed. I mentioned I learned Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign. I was the yearbook editor for 3 years in a row because I was the only fucking kid who could do it, which, by the way, is a lot of power to wield. Yeah. You can make anyone look like anything. You can like change any text. I'm kidding. So those things combined makes Kiip. Think about it. Games, design, advertising. I studied marketing. I don't know if I mentioned this. So I always look, especially, so when you asked me what the criteria for the founders that I fund, I also look at their history as a person. What did you do growing up, right? Were you huge in sports? Were you huge in music? Were you huge in artsy, creative stuff? Were you huge in whatever? And then it would align, or did your family background also matters too, actually? Did your parents, you have a long lineage of tailors, or you have a long lineage of engineers? Why that matters is because that influences your ability to then align the founder idea story, right? And so, for example, for new tech, yes, you could think about AI, you could think about blockchain, but what application of it would matter for you? So let's say your family is a long line of tailors. What if you use AI to create automated fashion looks for people, right? Based on a collective brain of fashion. I'm making shit up, but that would be but if you say, yeah, literally my great grandmother was like Winston Churchill's fucking whatever. Like you're making shit up, but not making shit up, that would be real. But like that part, that gives you that credibility as you kind of think. So I guess this is a long-winded way of explaining to your question, which was like the way you come up with your idea should involve some of your past. I think it's really important. I think when someone shows up all of a sudden and goes, I've got a blockchain, AI, VR, drone startup, like what the fuck? Like is this bullshit?
I've seen that actually.
Sorry if I'm swearing too much in front of the kids, but you guys are old enough. Yeah.
Lindsay?
Thank you so much for coming out.
No worries.
And when I heard that you were going to be here, and I saw that you had written a book, I downloaded it on Audible, and thank you. I'm on chapter 3 of like 93 chapters.
Yeah, you're in for a lot of hearing this voice.
I know, but I came and heard it live, so thank you very much. But so it's interesting. So I actually work in higher education, and I also just received my MBA, earned my MBA. So I'm in a chapter right now of why you should get an MBA. So that's a lot.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
But I also agree with you that the institution of education is very far behind everything else. And so what is your vision on how we can change that and how we can improve that? Like give me, I don't know, like a 10-word answer.
Yeah, no, it's a fabulous question, and honestly, the only way I can tell you right now is I don't have enough data to be able to tell you right now, right? That's why I'm learning. I have theories. I think it's about something around individual learning plans. I think it's about giving self-direction to a certain extent to the kids who have the ability to do that. I think it's about a mixture of digital and physical, and I think it's a mixture of very liberal arts intensive education in the early years to generate creative skills. I think learning vocational skills is dumb because you can just learn that shit. I can fucking Google it anytime. I'm like the smartest person on the planet, right? I can Google anything. But there are certain things you can't Google. So I think honestly it could be like that test. It's like maybe we teach kids the skills that you can't Google, right? And you can't Google problem solving, right? If I lay out a problem and I ask you, this is an unstructured problem with imperfect data, tell me how to solve it. 90% of the kids I would meet today probably would not be able to go through it because the education system is just saying, hey, memorize all this shit about history, memorize all this shit about math, memorize all this shit about sciences and whatever. And half the time you forget everything, right? So that's sort of my thing. So I think that the future is a mix of those things. But the reason why I'm learning is like, how can we use tech? And then how can we use real data? Because my theories could be extremely naive, right? Because I'm not someone who literally spent 45 years studying child psychology. And there are people who have done that. And I want to sit down with that person and say, you literally have been studying child psychology for 45 years. Tell me what I'm missing, right? And that's how I would think about going through it. But I don't have time right now to do it, so later. Yeah. All right, last question. We got to run to Tahoe, sorry.
Okay, well then I'll make this quick. I've heard that most businesses fail because the entrepreneur assumes he knows the problem better than his consumer. Would you agree with that statement, or would you disagree on it?
I would tweak it. I would say they knew it better. They think they knew it better and refused to listen, right? And also had this messiah complex and thought that they're Steve fucking Jobs, which you're not. Because everyone goes like, oh, Steve knew that everyone had the iPad before they knew they wanted it. He's Steve fucking Jobs. There's one guy out of 7 billion people, right? So you can't be this messiah complex and think you know everything before. Like, you just can't. Like, most people have to listen to what is the problem and then figure out how to solve it. And coming in with a solution before the problem is a big issue, right? So I think it's just making sure you listen, have that adequate sense of listening.
All right, so my final question.
Okay, sure.
Who's your favorite superhero?
Yes. Perfect.
Like a Marvel DC superhero or?
Sure.
I don't know.
At least you know what Marvel and DC is. I've talked to people that didn't know.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't really have any superhero I really like. I'm a huge fan of. I guess obviously the cop-out is like Iron Man, just because, you know, he used his wealth and his intelligence.
We've got that answer a couple times.
Yeah. Whatever.
Well, how about this? We've actually made you a hero in this game here. So.
Oh, thanks.
So thank you so much for coming out here and making your way out here. So. Only works on Android.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it.